Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Chavez.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so let's get started. It's 9 o'clock. I see Mr. Cogden here. Thank you for being here, sir. Is the appellant here, Mr. Notary?
Yes, that's me. Identified as Robert on the screen.
Got it. I see it. Thank you so much. Okay, let's get started. My name is Stephen Chavez. I am the Land Use Hearing Officer for the City of Albuquerque. Today's date is April 11th, 2022, and we are here on an appeal from the Zoning Hearing Examiner. It is appeal number AC-22-3. I've read the entire record. Thank you, folks, for submitting the evidence of the record. Let's get started. Mr. Notary, please raise your right hand and let me know when it's raised.
It is raised.
Thank you. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and only the truth under penalty of perjury, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Well, this is about a wall that was constructed behind our property. That was a new section of wall that does not match up to the other section. It was done without a permit, and it was done out of character with the existing wall and made a significant difference to the look of our backyard, as that wall is the prominent feature in the backyard. What had been a vegetated area is now a wall, and wall was not done in a good manner in terms of the normal construction practices that would have tied at a corner the blocks together. Instead, there's a gap there. And so our concern is both from an appearance standpoint and what that does to the value of our property, as well as the more functional aspects of leakage and dirt and water that's going to happen through that poorly constructed the wall.
Okay.
And it's additionally, it's not even finished on our side. It was not even, joints aren't even troweled at the top of that wall. It exceeds the existing wall is 12 feet high on our side, and that wall was probably placed, original construction of the neighborhood. It has some buttresses that come out into our property actually to support that wall. So really we have a loss of property already because of this wall that's, an imposing wall. And then this new section of wall goes 3 courses of wall, 24 inches above that existing 12-foot wall. And so the original request, I guess after this whole process started, the original hearing requested 4 feet extension above the standard 8-foot high limit on that wall. And the wall exceeds that in that it's actually six feet above the 8-foot limit. And so from our side, and in the pictures that I submitted, you can see that it is 3 courses above that, what is now what had been the 12-foot wall.
Okay. Mr. Notary, are you finished? I have a few questions for you.
Yes, sir.
So I'm looking at the record. Do you have a copy of the record in front of you?
Which record? The original?
No, the record of this appeal, sir. It's yes, a 65-page record.
Yes, I do.
Oh, good. On page 30 of the record, can you take a look at that? I have a few questions regarding that and your description. Let me know when you're there.
I'm afraid I don't have the big. I have the document that I submitted. I don't have the full 60-page document.
Well, it should have been sent to you. You should have it. But on page 30 of the record, there is a engineering design drawing. Do you have that? The wall section?
Yes, I do, from
Okay,
Sierra
good.
Engineering.
That's correct. So you described the wall as 12 feet on your side. I see that. The 12-foot measurement is from your side of your property, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And it looks like you said the existing wall on the applicant side of the property, on Mr. Cogden's side of the property, is supposed to be 8 feet. That's the limit. And then he requested an additional 4 feet, correct?
I thought that was referring to the wall height on our
On your
side.
side. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
I thought that was referring to the 12 feet height on our side as it's shown on that wall section.
I thought so too, and so I'm not sure what the zoning hearing examiner actually approved, because it looks like he approved 4 foot from the 8 foot, but that would be on your side.
Yes.
Okay, and it doesn't appear to explain what was approved on the applicant side, but I'm assuming he approved 8 courses of the cinder block, but I can't be sure. I'm sure Mr. Coggan can answer that question for me. Now, you said you lost some of your property. I don't understand that description. What isn't this wall on the boundary line?
It is, but there's buttresses that help support that wall that come into our property. So if you're looking at that same section view, you could imagine from about the point where the wall changes from a 8-inch wide to a 6-inch wide wall, about from that point, if you just drew a triangle from that point down to the base, which is the at that top of that footing, there is a buttress that comes out approximately 3 feet into our property in order to sustain that wall, because there's quite a bearing load.
Wasn't that
wall.
buttress there before, though?
Yes, that buttress was always there.
Okay.
Well, I don't know always, but it was there since we purchased the property.
Right.
Yeah.
And okay, so I have a whole lot more questions, but I'm not sure you can answer those questions for me. Okay. Now, I'm looking at the photograph that you submitted, one of the photographs you submitted on page 10 of the record, which is from your backyard.
Yeah.
And it shows number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is described as the new wall, and number 2 is the old remnant wall. Now, the old remnant wall is the cinder block courses that go that are essentially 4 cinder block courses above, correct?
Yes, the ones, the unpainted ones that you see above the wall.
That essentially looks like a chimney.
Yes, exactly. And that's remnants of the old wall that was taken down.
Right. Okay. Now, the wall that's depicted in your photograph, the existing wall, it looks like it was stuccoed at some time ago. Is that correct? Is it stucco or is it painted?
It's stuccoed.
Okay. Now, if it was stuccoed now, I mean, it would essentially match except for the above 2 courses, correct?
Actually, above 3 courses, yes.
Is it 3 courses? Right. I see. My apologies. Okay.
Yeah, that would, I mean, appearance wise, that would, yeah, it would, like you say, look like the other wall.
Now, the engineering analysis that was done by Sierra Engineering Solutions LLC, it looks like that, you know, my concern was essentially what you've argued, in that it's not stable. But they apparently came to the conclusion that the wall is stable, and I'm guessing it's because of the 2-inch or the 1/2-inch rebar that was used. Do you know if the 1/2-inch rebar goes all the way down to the buttress, or does it just go down past the existing grade? Do you have any idea?
I do not know.
Okay. Do you dispute any of the findings from the engineering company?
Well, he came, actually, I met with him in December, and he had not seen the property. He hadn't not seen it from our level when he wrote the report.
Right.
So when he looked at it, he did comment on some things when he was there, including some, basically agreeing that there's a lot of stresses on that wall already, that and you can see in the picture that I submitted, there is some cracking that's taking place already in that wall.
Which photograph are you referring to?
The one that you were just referring to with the face-on shot of that wall from the back.
I see cracking, but I see it on the existing wall.
Yes, exactly. But that raised the concern, about, okay, what's happening with the new section, and he had not seen the opening in the side of the wall, which is the second picture. I apologize for not having these in the order that you have them in, but
no, I know
maybe
which
two pages later.
Page 12 of the record, right?
And it has a gap, pretty significant gap, all the way down to the base of the new wall that they built. And he didn't like that, because normally those courses of blocks intertwine.
Right.
You have them woven together, whatever you want, however you say that.
It adds stability and strength, of course.
Yeah. And so for a corner like this to not have that is not only, not substantially structural, bearing, but it's allowing for a leak, because the grade level is above that point where the new wall starts.
Mm-hmm. Did you submit these photographs to the ZHE, or were these just for this appeal?
They were just for the appeal. Actually, I was out of town and I did not get the notice of the first hearing until I came back, like Christmas Eve, only to find out that the hearing had taken place a few days before that. So that's unfortunately why I had to go with an appeal.
Okay, so the notice was sent to your home. You just didn't pick it up until you returned from your trip, correct?
Right. I think it was sent out early in first week or so of December, and I didn't receive. Yeah, didn't.
Okay.
Did
you bring these matters up to the applicant? It looks like you did. In your appeal, you wrote that you tried to discuss it with him to some extent.
I did several times by mail, or email, and by telephone. I did talk to his son, who lives at the property, at one point, but he referred me on to his father, who was the agent. But my understanding was that there was some part of that construction that they did not like, and that there was some conflict with the contractor who did it. Some dispute with the contractor that was ongoing at that time when I talked to him, that was January the 10th.
Okay. So
But I was trying to resolve this with them directly because I think that's what neighbors should do.
but you've been unsuccessful. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the engineering report, did you, I thought you said earlier that when the engineering report was written, that the engineer, it was your belief that the engineer had not seen the gap in the wall.
That's right.
How do you know that?
Because the engineer, after I received the documents for that original hearing, which included the engineer's report, I contacted the engineer to ask him if he had seen that, and he said he had not, but he would like to have seen that, and so I invited him over, and he saw it, and that was in January, I believe.
Did he indicate to you that he would amend his report?
No, he did not say he would amend the report. He did say that he would talk with the owner.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you would like to add? You do have the right to cross-examine Mr. Cogden when he testifies, and then you have a right to give me a closing argument, essentially, if you like. Okay.
You know, I had one other thing I kind of wanted to mention, because as I'm looking at this wall and reading through all these ordinances that go along with that, I'm even confused about the fencing that is visible. I guess that was sheet 10 in my picture, that is visible above that wall. And just to ask more than anything, the ordinance says that their limitation and description of a wall is actually collectively a wall and fence. So
I don't understand your point. What is your point?
my point is, if there's a fence there, which there is, looking at the picture on sheet 10, that goes a couple feet above that further, isn't that in itself a violation of the normal wall height?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think you need to contact the zoning enforcement folks to have them address that. Okay, this isn't the proper venue to address that issue.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And
go ahead.
Just a question on that, because again, I tried to resolve this without taking the time of everybody to get together today. And I apologize for bringing everybody together, but this is really an eyesore for us. And I tried to call originally the permitting department, and there was no permit, given for this construction until recently. Apparently, I see that a permit was applied for and completed after March 14th. But it seems that the permitting side, when I brought up these issues, is waiting for zoning, to act on it. And so I'm really rather confused about how to resolve this. And I'm hoping that by the end of this discussion today, maybe I can understand how this can go forward to some resolution.
Okay. Well, I can't answer your question. I mean, I can tell you, because this is an appeal, I am obligated to review the zoning hearing examiner's decision to determine if it meets the standard for appeals. Okay. So if the zoning hearing examiner erred in some way, if he erred in applying the ordinance or the law, or if he erred in applying the facts to the ordinance, or if he erred in some other meaningful way, I can recommend that his decision be reversed, or that I can remand it back to the hearing officer, to the ZHE, to deal with certain issues that I find that needs to be addressed. That gap in the wall is an issue that should be addressed unless we can address it here today. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you. And let me close my screen. Hold on a second. Okay, thank you. Mr. Condon, how are you? You are on mute, so I can't hear you. Do you know how to unmute? It's at the bottom left-hand side of your screen.
Got it.
Got it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and only the truth under penalty of perjury, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, first off, my son bought this house a couple years ago, and there was a portion of the property that was unusable because of that remnant wall that Mr. Notary was talking about. So there was basically a 6-foot by 35-foot area that was his property but was unusable. So we decided to do something nice for them and have their that wall knocked down, but then they need a wall. So there was a remnant wall around the remnant wall we've been talking about, the one that already had the buttresses. And friends of ours had used a contractor by name of Mr. Mudd. And so we asked him to come and look at it. And he said, because there's a remnant wall, he mistakenly told us that a permit would not be necessary, which we subsequently found out was not the case. But yes, he left, there was a gap, and one engineer, I guess was an inspector for the city, looked at it and he said, well, that gives both walls a chance to expand and contract with heating and cooling on their own, but they don't meet at a 90-degree angle. So one of the things Mr. Notary put in, that there's no pilaster there. Now, it seems to me that a pilaster would not be appropriate when the angle of the walls is an acute angle. But the contractor did offer at his own cost to put forms there and to fill in those gaps with concrete. We're just kind of waiting for the resolution of this whole matter, but that sounded good to us too, because one of their cats had once gotten himself stuck in that gap there. But I know Mr. The engineer, his name escapes me for some reason at this moment, but he dug down to the base on Jared's side of the wall, and he was right next to that gap, so he had to have seen it. But it might have escaped his memory or something, but he was right there next to it. And it didn't seem to alarm him. The rebar, I know, is all the way down to the remnant wall, because we visited as the wall was being built, and we saw the rebar sticking out. And unless it was just balanced on there, it had to have been down to the base of or top of the remnant wall. It's an eyesore on the other side. We're willing to work with Mr. Notary to make it match the remaining part of the wall, if that's necessary. And as far as that wooden fence goes, that fence was already there when my son purchased the property. And if that fence was not there, the wall that's on his side would have had to been raised to give him a decent wall on that side. Otherwise, it would have only been a foot or two high. So you can kind of see that if the wall on the backside of his property there was shorter, there wouldn't be much of a wall on my son's side. And I think that engineering diagram kind of shows that situation. But yeah, and it's made of the same materials, but except for the fence that was already in existence. But as far as that thing that looks like a chimney there, we'd certainly be willing to knock off a few blocks of that. And perhaps any other obnoxious parts of the wall. But it is, as it said in the decision record, that wall was consistent with architecture in that particular neighborhood. But yeah, we can work with some of the aspects of it.
Well, good. That's good to hear, sir. So let me get this straight because it's important. You're willing to agree to get your contractor or whoever to build a form to place concrete into that gap, essentially to make the two sides match without interlocking blocks. I think building a form and pouring concrete in there would do the trick, and it could be done to make it look like the blocks. Somebody that knows what they're doing can do that. You're willing to do that?
Yes, and as I said, the contractor is willing to do it at his cost.
I'm not concerned with the contractor because the contractor is not a part of this appeal, but are you willing to do that as the landowner?
I'm willing to get it done, yes.
Okay. And would you be willing to get it done within 3 months, 90 days?
Well, once again, I'm not going to do the work myself, and it would, to some extent, depend on the schedule of that contractor, but I assume that 3 months would be a good time limit.
Okay. And with regard to the remnant wall, you're willing to take down at least 3 of those the 8-inch blocks, 3 of the 8-inch blocks?
Yes, I mean, it's not performing any function at this point.
Sure, I see that. Well, good. So, Mr. Notary, are you there?
Yes.
Would you be agreeable to that, sir? To those 2 conditions? If I recommended approval, and I can tell you that there's not a strong basis to reverse the ZHE in your appeal. I can send it back to the ZHE to enforce these conditions, but it would be quicker if I would find that the ZHE did not err, except for these 2 issues. And with Mr. Congdon's agreement, with his stipulation to these conditions, and if you agree to it, I can recommend to the city council, and the city council can adopt those findings if they so choose. I don't see why they wouldn't, but they have the discretion not to agree to it. Mm-hmm. But would you agree to those 2 conditions, sir?
As a start, yes. I think I'd like to refer back to that picture on page 10 and just understand what I'm agreeing to. I would, again, the chimney, the old remnant of that is one thing, and that looks like it's probably about 4 blocks, on this picture. But then there's the 3 blocks of the new wall that are not matching up with the existing wall. Those top 3 courses of the new wall that fill in the gap that Mr. Congdon was referring to there, property, basically adding on that edge of the property. And then your comment too about the stucco on that.
Now he's not. I can tell you under law, you're responsible to stucco your side of the wall. That's your responsibility.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Congdon, would you agree to take down at least 3 of those courses on the? It looks like 6 feet of that wall.
On the new wall you're talking about,
Correct.
no, because that would leave a very short wall on my son's side of the property line.
What about 2 courses?
Um,
Would match the wall.
I think maybe an examination of that inside, he only has about 6 feet on that side. And I think he's kind of entitled to at least a functional wall, or he'll end up having to put some kind of extension like that pre-existing fence.
I find that as
Okay,
far
hold
as,
on, folks. Hold on. Let Mr. Congdon speak. Thank you.
Yeah, it's in accordance with that engineering diagram, and it's what he needs on the inside.
Okay.
He would have liked to have had block wall all the way without that extension fence we were talking about.
Mhm.
But that was what was there, and at least it's functional for now.
Okay, thank you. With regard to the remnant, you will agree to take down 4 courses of the remnant?
Yeah, that I can do. It's just
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add, Mr. Congdon, to your testimony?
Well, if there is, I can't think of it right now. I think we pretty much covered the docs.
Okay. Mr. Notary, now you have an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Congdon regarding his testimony, not to argue with him, but only to ask him questions. Okay, and the questions are for my benefit, not necessarily for your benefit. Do you have any questions for Mr. Congdon regarding his testimony?
yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So from the appearance on the photograph that was included on the, again, apologize, I don't have the number on this. This was in the engineer's report of the original hearing. And that the wood fence stops right at that remnant, I guess we call it, of the old wall. And in that fence, you can actually kind of see in that photograph through the fence, and you can see that the top 3 courses approximately, you can kind of see light coming through that fence there, which lines up with what is seen from our side of that as well. So would you accept, as a consistency on your side, as well as from our side, to make it look the same, would be to take those top 3 courses of the new wall out and to extend that fence over to give you the privacy that you desire. And that would line up, then match existing condition.
Before you answer, Mr. Congdon, I don't know if you understood the question.
Yes.
Okay, good. I normally wouldn't allow you to answer that question because it's basically a negotiation, but I think it could be helpful in this matter. Can you answer the question, sir?
Well, that pre-existing fence is kind of getting close to ready for some kind of replacement, and I'm not sure that what's there now would be an appropriate replacement. We'd probably start going through the whole process to look at walls that are consistent with other houses in the neighborhood. I mean, everybody seems to get a wall there, and that's the character of that particular neighborhood. So I really don't think that would be an appropriate modification.
You can't answer that question today until you've done your investigation. Is that what you're saying?
No, I can't.
That's fair. Mr. Notary, do you have more questions?
I guess just a comment to, again, look back on that picture on page 10.
Mr. Notary, I will allow you time for commentary. This is the time now for you to just continue to ask questions of Mr. Congdon. If you don't have any questions, that's fine. We can move on to your comments.
Okay, I really have no other questions for him.
Okay, before we move on to your comments, I'm going to allow Mr. Congdon to ask you questions based on your testimony. Mr. Congdon, do you have any questions for Mr. Notary on his testimony earlier?
So
Just questions, only questions, not arguments.
I don't.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Notary, go ahead.
Okay, going back to that picture, page 10, just to clarify one point, this is not something that's out of character. I guess this wall is the big wall along that side. And it continues. I didn't take pictures all the way down to the right, but it continues all the way through the neighbor's property to the right. But to the left, if you look at that picture, you'll see that the wall drops down significantly to the next neighbor. It's clear to the bottom of the extension. It's a continuation at that level that it was at originally before this new section of wall was placed. So what it amounts to is the top 3 courses of this wall that was newly placed are completely out of character for the architectural look of that wall throughout that whole side. There's not another spot that goes 3 courses. This is a abutment going up from that existing wall, and all the way to the left, going further to the left, it's a much shorter wall. So I just wanted to point that out, because I do believe that it's out of character.
I mean, that's an interesting point, Mr. Notary, but let me tell you that it looks like the space on the left of that photograph is not on Mr. Cogdon's property. Is that correct, Mr. Cogdon?
I believe so, yeah. And part of the nature of the ground there is that my son's property is higher because of the slope of the land than the surrounding properties.
No, I get that, but the space that Mr. Notary is describing on the left side of that photograph on page 10 of the record, that is somebody else's property, correct?
That is correct.
Starting to lose you.
Okay. My apologies. This on page 10 of the record, the photograph that Mr. Notary is describing, to the left of the photograph, there's that space where the wall is much shorter. That space is on somebody else's property, not on your son's property. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe that's true, but
Because if I compare that photograph with the the photograph on page 27 of the record, it looks like it's beyond the 37-foot wall that you constructed.
I think so. I'm not really sure based on your verbal description exactly what that is, but I believe that's true.
I can speak to that. That is true what you're saying.
Okay.
That is the other neighbor's property.
I mean, this whole circumstance raises some issues that New Mexico law doesn't really address very well, unfortunately. Because if Mr. Congdon's son's property is an anomaly as far as its base level, its grade level compared to the other properties, then anything Mr. Congdon's son does will create something out of sorts with the rest of the area.
It's,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I understand. And it is a grade, there's a grade separation, or, you know, it does go up to his property. So not really making an argument for it being as short as it is to the left. I'm just pointing it out that
Right.
that property is the tallest all along there as it goes further to the right. And so, and it's all consistently at that same height. So looking at the page 10 picture, it's 3 blocks higher than it should be. Even, you know, okay, even what it was before. The reason that remnant is sitting there is there used to be a wall that was going all the way back at that height, or that was made up the wall anyway. And, you know, I'm just saying that I think that should have been what was done with this wall, to have kept it a uniform appearance all the way along that at the 12-foot height, which is what he requested, which, you know, if it was kept at 12 feet, I think that would be fine. You know, the 4 feet additional height that he originally requested would put it right at that height of that existing wall all the way along there.
Now, the request of 4 feet, it's from the existing grade on Mr. Cogden's property. Is that what you're saying? Or the grade on your property?
No, I think a wall starts at its foundation. And when you and when you talk about a wall from a construction standpoint, and because this is talking about a wall height because of the soil pressures that hit the wall, and it's just an engineering thing. You don't want a wall to be too high and be a retaining wall past a certain point without.
I understand the construction terminology and how it fits, but I'm trying to make that fit into the IDO, the ordinance that we're dealing with, because the IDO doesn't address the base. It addresses the existing grade.
Well, my existing grade, it's a 12-foot wall, and I think that's what you measure off of, because that's the amount of soil pressure you're trying to hold back.
Right. No, I have one question for Mr. Cogden. On your son's property, on his side, his wall is 5 feet 4 inches from the grade?
If that was what the diagram said. In fact, that new wall, he has an existing wall toward the front half of his property. And the new wall actually does not reach the height of the old wall that is on the property line. So I mean, they could have put another, I guess if they put another course, then we might have a problem, but it would have.
The existing wall is a retaining wall, and that hasn't been removed, correct?
No, I'm referring to, say, this wall is only on that north side of his property, is only on the western half. And there's a wall he already has on the eastern half that is, in fact, higher than the new wall. So would that mean, say, if we had to knock off 3 courses of that one, do we have to knock off 4 courses of the old wall? But it does match what was already there.
On your side, right? I understand that. That's the problem. Are you going to add the granular fill that the engineer recommended?
Well, if we ever get to that point where it's okay to do that, yeah. I was going to put pea gravel up to most of the fill and then add some soil on the top of that. But not until, say, the corners are filled with concrete.
Right, which will give it the strength it will need. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I know this is an unusual hearing because I asked a lot more questions. Mr. Notary, do you have any more questions based on the answers that Mr. Cogden has given me in the last part of this appeal? Do you have any questions regarding those issues?
Would that require a permit for what you're talking about?
The granular fill?
No, the gap filling concrete pour.
I don't know the answer to that question. I expect it will. I can't imagine how the city would deny a permit for that, but I would expect it will require a permit. But it might be part of the existing permit. I don't know. I don't have that in this record. I suppose if it's not in the existing permit should have been amended to include that. I can't imagine why the city would allow the gap without requiring that there be some sort of connection, because it's an engineering issue, and it's a functional issue. It creates problems for local pets. So anyway, I'm just commenting. I don't know the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Notary, do you have any more questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, Mr. Cogden, any further questions for Mr. Notary?
No.
Okay, thank you, folks. What I will do is I will review this a little closer, and then within 10 days, I will have a written, either a recommendation to the city council, and it's only a recommendation. I don't make decisions for the city council. They can either adopt it or reject it or amend it. If they reject it, sometimes they hold a hearing, or they could send it back to the ZHE for more findings. Or what I can do is I can remand it to the ZHE with instructions on how to deal with some of these issues. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to look at it much closer. Thank you all for your time.
Good.
And-
On that point, I had a
Yes,
question
sir.
about what you just said.
Sure.
So your recommendation to the city council, it seems like one of the core questions here is where do you measure that wall? So is that going to be resolved through this?
You mean the height of the wall or the length?
Yeah, where is that wall height measured? Is it from the foundation?
Well, I wish I would have known that from the ZHE's decision. I couldn't tell what the ZHE approved. Essentially, I don't know whether the 4-foot variance was for Mr. Cogden's son's side of the wall or from your side of the wall. I don't know the answer to that question. I assumed it was from Mr. Cogden's son's side of the wall, but because there's such a disparity in height, both sides should have been dealt with. But you know, that's a perfect world, I assume. So, does that answer your question, sir?
Well, I no, I guess not.
Well,
It's a I guess a point that you would think there would be an easy answer to this, and maybe it would be part of this discussion to come up with that determination. What is being referred to? Is it the foundation height, or is it the grade height at the higher level, and maybe set some precedents for interpretation in the future.
I agree. Okay. Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
Have a good day. We're going to go
Thank
off the
you.
record. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.